That's right, friends. It's time to cinch up the 5-point and jump right into another episode of Corbetting with Chris.
Welcome, Mr. Scott Blum. You come up a lot in conversation, and I really wanted you to come on the podcast here just to have a quick chat with. Sometimes we all have questions how you do it, first of all, but just get a little background. Like, how did you end up at Jeep? As I understand it now, you're not necessarily in the Wrangler department. You've moved around the Stellantis chain there, but you have to explain what you're doing now if you can. And for our viewers, there's a little bit of, it's always hard when you work for a big company. You can't necessarily, certain things you can't talk about, certain things you can talk about. But Scott and I have known each other for quite a while now. And I have always been impressed at the level that you give to the social groups and the Jeep pages. Really, just good, solid advice. I'll just leave it at that. Good technical advice. For me, sometimes I joke you should be the head of the CSR department because you're always, why don't you have that job? As a matter of fact,
I used to work in that department for a while.
Really? Well, you should be president of that department or a director of that department because you do a really good job at it. And there's a lot of us that are, we're all on the JLs and we're all on the forums and the chat groups and everything. And yeah, you do a really good job of just the balance between, pushing too many buttons and going overboard and just, you always stick to the facts, which I think a lot of people appreciate. And you chime in a lot of times with the facts, even, against an army of wrong, so to speak. You do really good at that. But how did you, I know you worked for GE for a while, but give us a little background. Like, how'd you get into Stellantis? How'd it work out?
I grew up in Pennsylvania, right? I went to college at Pitt. My actual degree is electrical engineering, which most people probably wouldn't know because I haven't done it in decades now.
Did you? That was just what when you were going to school? Why that? Was it just something you were interested in?
I went to a tiny little middle of nowhere. I mean, my graduating class was 42 people,
and
that was the largest class in 25 years. So my sister graduated with 18. Just to give you an idea of the size of my school.
Wow.
So back then it was like, hey, what do college planning back then wasn't like today. Especially where I was like, oh, I'm good at math and science. I'm going to go for engineering. Right. I mean, that's how I got there.
What'd you want to do? What would you do?
Really know. I mean, in all honesty, I knew I liked to tinker with stuff. I mean, I started, growing up, I think I got my first ATV when I was like 8. Right. So I always tinkered around with stuff. I went to school.
You had a little mechanical in you, engineer knowledge.
My dad had a car shop like in our garage when I was growing up, when I was younger. When he passed away, like I still have half of his tools. I still use his name engraved on them, right? All the old, his are a lot of Mac from back then, from probably 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But I tinkered with stuff the whole time. So I've always been like a tinkery person. I went to school, went for electrical. I liked more than, I don't know. I'm kind of a nerd for electrical stuff. I used to build computers and stuff for fun.
Yeah, you have to tell your JL story, your sunken JL story. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's it. But that's my unfun part. But I went for engineering when I was getting close to graduation. I had job offers. This is in 2000. So I had job offers at General Electric, which made locomotives, the division I went to. Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, and Bechtel Bettis, right? So 3 defense contractors.
Right out of school? Just
right out of school.
Wow,
yeah.
Nice.
And they all, I honestly was considering some of the other ones, but they were straight up with me, which I'll give them credit for to this day. They said, you live and die by who's in office, right? At the other ones. That was all pre 9/11, right? So they're all like, hey, we can guarantee you a job for a year, but a year from now, we could be out of work. So I went to GE, which at the time, it still is huge. But it basically started in they have a program, and we actually have one in Stellantis too, but it's for, I'll call it entry-level engineers right out of school. So you rotate jobs every 4 months. Every 6 months, sorry. For the first 2 years, you go through 4 jobs to kind of get a feel for what you want to do. I started, I'm trying to remember, I think I was working with like some power electronics thing, my first job. And then 6 months in, I get a call from like the vice president of engineering. And I'm like, uh-oh, like, did I do something? Am I fired? Um, they sent me to Kansas City, Missouri, to one of our huge shops to go help the technicians work on locomotives.
Wow.
I've been there for 6 months and they sent me out. I'd never even seen one of the ones I was going to help. So I
Wow.
showed up and these guys are like, how are you going to help us? And I'm like, I've never seen one of these. We're going to learn at the same time. But it was awesome because it was hands on, right? So, I was 21 at the time, I think, like
Wow.
rebuilding $500,000 engines and stuff with guys. But it was cool,
And
but it was neat
look,
seeing it like in a field service side,
locomotives,
like the trains.
yeah, they're the new ones. They're all hybrid, are they not? They're like
They're diesel electric.
yeah, very cool.
Which is funny. You see stuff like our new Ram that's coming out, right? That's basically an electric vehicle with a generator.
Yeah,
I laugh.
yeah.
Locomotives don't have batteries; they can't support that. But I laugh. I'm like, I worked on this stuff like 20 years ago. That's the way they've been since the 70s. They're all electric powered. It's just a big, huge diesel. But I really liked that because again, it was hands on.
Yeah.
I did that for a while. I jumped back and forth between engineering and customer service, comically.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're good at it.
And then
you got something to fall back on.
and then I did like program management for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, more with the customers. Like I tried to stay in the technical side. And one of my good friends that worked at GE with me had left and came here to work for, that was 12 years ago. So that would have been Chrysler Group. I think it was right after bankruptcy when Fiat didn't own them yet, but they were like, I'll
That
call
was
it the majority
post-Daimler?
stakeholder. Yeah, post Daimler, post Cerberus. So that would have been like 2011, I think he came here.
Mm.
And I was always a car guy. I had all kinds of toys, right? Like, every year I'd be swapping cars, right? And he's like, hey, it's really cool. If you're interested, we have openings in my group, which was product planning, which is honestly what I've done until the last couple of years, the whole time I've been there. And I was like, well, how is it? Is it, back then, you go back 12 years ago, right? You're just coming out of bankruptcy. I work at General Electric, which is like one of the most profitable companies in the world. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, why not?
Did you know what program to come
No
out
idea.
there? You just,
Nope.
just ready for a change, just young like we are sometimes. And
and the guy that was hiring me, I knew he had mostly the Jeeps, and he had like Durango and some other, basically the SUVs and the Jeeps.
nice.
So I came here, and the first thing I worked on was Durango, right? Which was like, I think I worked on that for like 6 months, and then I took over Grand Cherokee too. And that was right when we were launching the new SRT with the 8-speed and all the stuff we put in those. And then at some point in time, I'm trying to remember, in my first year, I ended up having, I think it was Durango, Grand Cherokee, the Maserati that eventually became the Levante, the Wagoneer, comically like 12 years ago, I was working on that it's pretty close to what came out a couple of years ago. Wrangler, Gladiator wasn't even a thought at that time. But I had like 5 of them, right? And I was doing too many of them at once.
What does that mean? What are you doing during this time frame? Is it
basically? Oh yeah, I guess I'm so used to.
Is it like parts sourcing? Is it?
It's planning out what to do with the vehicle life cycles, right? So you're trying to think of, like I use today's Wrangler, right? What am I going to do for the next 5 years, and then you're usually working on the next generation vehicle at the same time. So you're doing in-market stuff, and what I mean by planning out, it's what features should they have, what competition's coming, what do we have to think about to do ahead of time. And some Grand Cherokee was a nightmare, right? Because you've got Explorer, Highlander, you got all kinds of competitors.
It's a crowded segment, very crowded.
Wrangler was, pretty quiet. Wrangler was always ourselves. We always benchmarked ourselves until obviously Ford decided to jump in the ballpark. We'd always be watching for Range Rover or somebody to come out with something. But a lot of it, it's pure planning for the future. So you're telling the engineers what you want, essentially. And mine was always weird because a lot of people in that job, right? They're MBAs, right? A lot of them are literally business people. They have some car sense, and there's some of them they're car people. Like the truck guys are all kind of truck guys. If you go, pick the guys that work on Ram. Most of them, you know, are driving trucks.
I have a fundamental understanding of trucks and Ram because they've got their own history running them and using them.
But Wrangler became a good fit for me because what was weird was, so when I moved to Chrysler, I had my Audi RS4, which was modified, right? And then I had an S2000 that was completely set up for track duty. And I went to Moab the first year, and I was like, all right, I sold everything and went and bought a Wrangler.
You got the bug.
Right? And I quickly went from like, you know, stock 35, 37, 40s. And then from there it just went, you know, I went a little crazy. Now I would tell you I'm completely crazy. But there's it's why I like helping people, right? I mean, like everybody's been there, right? Especially today, like the social media people. I mean, it's just like, I don't know how to describe it. There's so many just angry people. I don't know what everybody's mad about. And just, I was like, you know, some of these people, I mean, granted, you could search and find stuff, but a lot of people are just new people. I mean, I think back to, I mean, God, it's been over a decade now, but it's, you know, when I didn't know anything, right? I mean, like when I first started doing it, Tony Carvalho sat across from me.
Yeah.
And he used to just laugh, right? Because I'd be like, I'd come in and I'd be like, hey, Tony, I'm going to do this. What do you think? Right? Just bounce stuff. See, I mean, you know, Tony, he's been there a long time before I was.
Yeah. You guys were kind of between, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you, Tony, and maybe Alex, I think you guys are all kind of that little, and there may be some more, but those are maybe the outward facing guys that I talked to over the years.
Yep.
You guys were kind of this triad of just asking questions, you know, before the JL came out, you know, and gathering knowledge and insight and dropping little teasers that we all loved, you know. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. But he used to die because he'd be like, you know, I'd talk to him like on a Friday, right? And then I'd come in Monday and I'd be like, so Tony, I ordered all that stuff. And he'd look at me and be like, what? And I'd be like, you know, we talked Friday. He's like, dude, I wasn't even paying attention. What did I tell you to do? And I was like, well, you know, I think the first thing I did was like some AEV lift kit, right? And then I I put all like the, you know, which was fine for what it was at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And then I went from there to like coilovers. And then I went to like, you know, 1-tons, and it just kept going. And he would just laugh because I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to do this or this. And then he learned quickly that what I said I was going to like to pay attention because I was seriously going to like order it the next day. And I loved it. Right. So, I mean, I did it. I went from product planning. I went to the Jeep brand for a while, which they get a little bit weird between them because brand is more of, I'll call it marketing. That's who you see a lot when you go to Moab. You see all the brand folks.
Brand's kind of like your outward facing, you know, vehicles and responsible for your events and shows and placements and that type of stuff.
Yeah. Everyone you see at the auto shows, right? That's the brand side, or like you see like on, you know, at EJS, they're out talking to the media. It's a brand side. When I went there, I ran like Badge of Honor. I launched Jeep Wave, which is out there now.
Nice.
Some other things, which was fun, but I always had more of a passion for the product. Like I enjoyed more
probably the engineering side in you.
Working with the engineers. Yeah. And they used to it was a love-hate relationship because again, most of the engineers are used to just folks like in my job just telling them, hey, you know, this is what I want, and they go figure it out. Whereas me, I'd be like, hey, you know, I want this, and I want you to have this gear ratio and this tire size and this offset, and they'd be like, what? And I'm like, listen, I'll tell you why. And I mean, I was a pain in their ass, like, especially like on JL, right? Like we'd be doing stuff and just thinking ahead of like, why do you make that? And not just me, right? There's other folks, obviously, besides just me, but a lot of us pushed that anybody that's modified, like even a JK to a JL will notice there's a lot of stuff where people thought ahead because we'd push them to, obviously in OE world, you have to meet all the rules and there's lots of stuff you have to do, but just trying to think ahead of, you know, the electric power steering, right? Like, you got to be able to remove it, right? And they would have never thought of that. Like you'd have had all kinds of bugs, like if you tried. Whereas, you know, now with some of the aftermarket programmers, you can just shut it off.
Yeah.
I mean, the programming guys figured it out, but it's only because there were hooks in there to be able to figure it out.
I feel like you guys early on were pretty big about dropping some of those little teasers or the software, you know, allowing, you know, maybe Taser or some of the other brands even to come in and modify quicker than I think some of the other OEMs have ever done.
Yeah. We sat with Mopar, like it was a big push of one of my biggest fears on JL was when they launched, were people going to do anything to them? right? Like, so we had a big push. I don't think it panned out very well for Mopar, but like, I don't know if you know this, but like, you can go to the dealer and you can program gear ratios, tire sizes, T-case ratios. There's a bunch of that stuff you can do at the dealer that we made sure you could do in case nobody figured it out.
Yep.
I think a lot of those, I think
I
they
do
figured it
remember
out.
that.
The hooks were there. I remember sitting with those guys. They were just laughing at me because they're like, what size? They asked them, go make a size range. And then they came and said, what do you think of this? And I said, that's great. Just widen it out. And they said, what do you mean? I think like the largest tire you can enter into a JL is like 44 inches measured. And they're like, who wants to run I was like, it doesn't matter. I said, honestly, if a guy wants to run 54s, he's on his own. I said, but I never told them that a 44 measured is really like a 46. Like, that, right?
Yeah.
It's, but like they asked for T-case ratios. I gave them everything I knew from, us, Ford, Advanced Adapters, Hero, who else? Basically, all the different things I could think of. Axle ratios. I went into like Ford 9-inch stuff, Dana stuff, Sterling, and they're just laughing because I just gave them these lists that were just so long. They're like, "Why?" I said, "Well, I want a guy to go bid at the junkyard if he wants to and grab, an old NP 205 out of a 70-something truck. I don't know who would do that, but if you wanted to, more power to him."
Giving them options. Giving them options.
I think that was all the fun stuff, was trying to make sure that we were doing stuff that would help.
And that was all. That was all on the front side of just the research. Just.
Yep.
Laying it all out, trying to figure out what the jail was going to be.
Yep.
Yeah. I remember that time frame. There was a lot of fear.
Everyone thought it was going to be IFS, and
yeah, remember that? I mean, that was the rumor that it was going to be IFS with and almost that same rumor dogged Ford because I remember like Bronco was going to be IFS, but they were going to have a factory solid axle conversion, right? And that was the same thing with the Jeep. Oh, it's going IFS, and they'll have a factory solid axle conversion, or the aftermarket will take care of it. They'll make it easy to put a steering box in it, and people were nervous about that. People were nervous. I remember we were on a JKX, and Carvello, he was talking to Mel and me. We were just a small group, and he said, the new Wrangler, it might have a digital display, and some guys might not be okay with that. And I remember Mel and I talked about it, like, who cares if it has a digital display? Like, and Mel's we kind of looked at each other, and Mel just said, just make sure you can fit a 35. Can we just fit a 35 on it? Like that was the concern, right? That maybe you'd have you'd limit the wheel well opening for liability or warranty or whatever it was. There were so many concerns about the going from JK to JL.
I remember reading all the all the leaks that I'd read online, and I'd sit there. Most of them I would just laugh. Right? I'd be like, "Where did you even come up with that?"
Yeah, how do you go from being the lurker,
right?
reading all those to the guy that can answer every technical question down to what color wire is there for your I mean,
I just like helping people. Like everybody's like, I've had people before say, do they pay? I said, no, they don't pay me. I said, I'm a Jeep person. I said, it's me. I said, they're very aware, because I made it. One thing I always worried about was like, am I going to get in trouble? Right. So we have some work for the Jeep CEO, right? And I made it very clear to all of them, like, hey, look, I share. Is it okay if I share stuff? And it was always one of those, like, as long as it's like public stuff. And by public, if you can go out, if you own one and you can go measure something, well, I can clearly tell you, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff I know that I don't say, right? There's stuff I read. And I'm like, I wish I could
think
answer
with any
that,
big company or corporation, that goes without saying, that you're given information that's proprietary, and you don't want to be out there squawking about it. You can, if it's in the public domain, because we put it out there, sure, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
But
I like helping people. Plus, I mean, I won't lie. I learn stuff too sometimes. I mean, there's things that I'll be like, the ones that really give me the ones like, I don't know that. And then I refuse to not know. So I'd have to go to work the next day and ask the engineers on some random stuff that I think right now I can tell you that I know every literally nut and bolt of a JL from the last couple of months. But there's again, it's just the car tweaking, like to work on stuff part of me beyond just making it better. That's why I really enjoyed it. And then, I mean, stuff we're launching now is still, I think we might be about done with the last. I mean, I switched jobs a year and a half ago. I think it was roughly.
So to back up a little bit, so
Yep.
you came in, you were program on the program for Durango, then
Yep.
you got the opportunity. How'd you get the opportunity to get over into Jeep? Was it?
So I worked on Grand Cherokee and Wrangler a lot.
Gotcha.
To the point where I worked with, it would have been Jim Morrison at the time. He was, I think, director at that time, maybe, a lot. And then, after 3 or 4 years, I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to try something new. And they had an opening. He said, well, just come over here. Like, he's like, you can work for me over here and work on some of these special projects. I got all these things going on that aren't tied to a certain car that I need somebody to come, work on it with.
Yep.
That's what I did. Like I said, I liked it. I mean, there was a lot of it, there's a lot of the fun stuff you see, like Moab and all that, and like every job, right? There's a lot of the not fun side of it.
What's the not fun side?
Oh, just data or getting beat up for sales. And, I mean, those guys, God bless them. I mean, every month is just, the close of the month, they either won or didn't. And January, the first of the next month, it's reset. You're starting over for the same, struggle.
It's funny to hear that from, I guess, for me, from you, from a car company, because I think a lot of companies are like that, but I don't think people really think about car companies like that, how much importance there is just from month to month to move numbers and get things out the door. We just assume it's just a year-end total, I think.
Yeah, no, they've got monthly targets for volume, share, profit, conquest, like every month. They have those numbers every month. If you hit them all at the end of the month, you might get like, a woohoo, good job. And the next day you're like, okay, you're starting over. You're at 0. I mean, it's very month to month. Because it's less, I think Stellantis, it's less so now because we don't report monthly anymore. But, if you look at Auto, it used to be every month, everyone reports their sales, right? And you always want to be the highest one. I think Stellantis, we report quarterly. I don't deal with it anymore, thank God. But, I think it's
you guys are,
do it.
Yeah, I believe you are quarterly now. Yeah. It changed a couple of years back. It used to be every month. And one other as well. Is it Toyota? I think there's 2 of you guys that don't do it every month now. It's changed.
Yeah, I think
recently.
they figured out that it was, it's probably more investor stuff than anything.
Yeah,
there's no reason you'd ever have to report it month to month, right? You're on investor stuff. There's no reason you would need to do that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I did that for a few years because I just wanted to work in the product. So I went back to, I think the last thing I did in the brand was get the Gladiator approved on the brand side, right? So the whole.
What does that look like? Getting it? Do you guys have to do a whole research against the competitive set? You're basically looking at their sales numbers, their sell through, their models. I mean, top to bottom, looking at everything.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out where you're going to pull from. Are you going to conquest them? Are you going to conquest us? Our biggest fear with Gladiator was we were going to steal Wrangler customers, right? Because like if we, if we don't get new people, there's all this stuff with pricing and share and trying to lay out where they're going to come from. Do
you guys look at a percentage on that? I mean, is that something you look at a percentage and say, if we could carve away, if there's these 5 brands in the marketplace, if we could carve away 15%, like a mythical number. Yeah, that's similar for a lot of companies, I think.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out how much are you going to be able to pull from others, and then how much are you going to grow it yourself, right? That's always the biggest fear of stuff. Was like it was the biggest fear with when Bronco came out, right? And you saw it. What happened was, the way most automotives look. There's a segment, right? So take mid-size truck, right? There's every year, if you look for 10 years, they sell 500,000 a year. It goes up and down a little bit, but so if you come into that, is that going to grow and you're going to pull new people in, or are you going to be fighting, the Ranger, the Tacoma, the Colorado, all those guys for it? Mid-sized truck, it grew some, but a lot of it was just, between each other. Toyota, I think, was the biggest loot. When Colorado came out, Ranger came out, Gladiator, all those in those couple years, Toyota's volumes went down a little bit. It didn't hurt much.
Not a lot though.
Not a lot.
Oddly enough, the Tacoma just really seems to be a stable, like they figured out their customer base, And it never dips too much. It just stays pretty even.
And they're loyal.
You know?
They have loyalty like we do, or like you see on full size trucks.
I
Like,
agree. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, there's a lot, but there's that, and the planning and brand kind of work together on I'll call it what the product should be, right? Because there's views from the brand guys, right? Like, it's a Jeep, it's got to be trail rated, and desert rated for Gladiator was all new, and it's got to do these 5 or 6 things, and even to the level of I want this feature and that feature, and how do you group them? There's a lot of that back and forth on who owns what. I think it's clear today. It's a little bit different. That's really in planning, but 5 years ago it was really shared between the two. We always used to laugh. It was so Tony had Gladiator on the planning side, and I did it from the brand side.
Gotcha. How with Gladiator? Don't mean to jump around, but
you're fine.
With Gladiator, like the Mojave, how do additions come along like that? What's the decision? Is that looking at a segment like Raptor and saying, the customer would like, air bumps and better shock up front? Is there?
Yeah, that one was really hard because, again, OEMs
I was outside the box.
Script.
Like that's not a traditional Jeep.
No,
I think most
OEMs
people would
don't
think
like
of
to stretch too much, and especially stuff like Jeep, right? Like Jeep, if you just said Jeep to somebody, they picture you crawling through some rocks, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's Jeep.
Agreed.
So we were doing Gladiator, and I mean, I'm going to offend some people probably doing a Gladiator on this, but they're not. If you're going to go buy a rock crawling, you don't buy a Gladiator. I mean, that's not the vehicle you would pick. They do good for what they are.
They do good. They're long.
Yes. So like
lots
we
of
thought of it
overhang.
so we tried thinking like customers, like, if you have one vehicle, right, and say you like to wheel, but you need a truck to go to Home Depot, Lowe's, you're like, that's a good fit for a Gladiator. But then we looked back then, there was really only Tacoma. That was before Colorado relaunched.
Yeah.
That was before Ranger came back. So we said, they got this TRD Pro. We're like, trucks, you had Raptor. That was about it back then too. I mean, you didn't have much of the other didn't have the other guys. Nowadays you have all of them, but then you didn't have it. And we said, if I think about that truck, wheelbase wise lends itself to higher speed stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then we said, well, what if we made something with a solid front axle that can actually outperform one of those? Which everybody said, oh, you can't do it. And we're like, well, let's try to do it. And that was kind of cool because that whole desert rating thing, that was when Mojave was being developed and TRX, right? Neither of them had launched yet. But we built a whole proving grounds in Yuma, Arizona, and they were testing them back to back with obviously Raptors, TRD Pros. Like the Mojave would outdo the TRD Pro all day on the track, right? I mean, that was the benchmark, and we set it to beat it, and it beat it handily. Now, right when we were getting ready to launch, that's when the ZR2 Colorado came out, and we're like, oh crap, here's a totally different bypass shock. Like, the TRD Pro, there's nothing wrong with it, but it wasn't, like a Raptor. So luckily it was pretty close there too, but it was, like if you think back then, I don't know if anybody still does, like has like, who puts hydraulic, bump stops on a factory vehicle? Nobody.
And my honest opinion is that Jeep did a very poor job of explaining that suspension.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that suspension was never really explained with, I don't know. I can't say that I really saw anything that explains how an air bump in conjunction with the shock work. Right. Why you would even want it? I mean, sure, go fast, but how does it all work?
Yeah. The show we had there, I think, was you had, I'll call it, folks who were familiar with like rock crawling, trying to market a desert truck, which like I would be the first one to say I don't know desert at all. Like I would probably
even the airbox was way cool. Like and I think it was out. I don't know. It was out a month or so before I actually saw an airbox, and I was just like, "Whoa, wait a sec! Like that's not very Jeep-like." That's
yeah. And we had stuff. I mean, I remember we did that. Like it was, again, the people working, the engineers were all like, "What?" Because we were setting, thresholds for. We're like, we have cycles we do for trail rating, right? Like you have to be able to go, drawbar tests, articulation. Well, for that we were setting like, speed. Like we want the lockers in 4 high, and we wanted to shut off stuff. We had a lot of heat stuff because we were worried about, you're out in Glamis or you're in the Middle East and you're just sending it across the dunes. Like the thing needs to survive in 100-degree temp. Like we're not used to it's not an issue with a Wrangler crawling through the Rubicon. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
overheat. So it was weird. It was cool to work on it. And it was cool because it was being done with the TRX folks too. Which, I mean, clearly they're two very different vehicles, but
Yeah.
but the I'll call it the functional team they set up for desert rating. They got pretty good limits. I mean, they tested it. The rule. I mean, I won't say what we broke several other OEMs desert trucks on our loops testing. We'll just say that. Like, there were many frames that had bad days. We'll just put it that way. And they tried to make it legit. I don't know that they did a great job. And you still see it today, right? You get all these people fighting on is Mojave better or Rubicon. And I'm like, for the love of God, guys, like, they're both. It depends what you're doing. The Rubicon is a terrible vehicle if you live like Glamis in the Rubicons. I'm sorry, the Rubicon is. Mojave is a terrible vehicle if you spend all your time in the Rubicon Trail. I mean, it's what you're buying. It's not, one doesn't have to be better than the other. You know, a TRX.
I come back to that marketing. Like, the Mojave, Gladiator just didn't have the great marketing, I think, to really for those that are Jeep fans, right. I think understood it, right? We knew what it was.
Yep.
Those that spent time in the desert, like, we knew what it was. But if my neighbor down the street, if he had the choice between a Rubicon and Mojave, he would know the difference. Right. I don't think he would understand it. So
and what's crazy is over time, it's I mean, I hate to say this, but like, Rubicon, when it launched, right? Like, I mean, basically you had Jim Rapp and Dave Yagi who went to AEV, like, that really pushed that through back in 04. Well, I mean, it was early when they launched it in 04, and that was because it was meant to be a factory, I'll call it more capable one. And over the years, they become, everybody just buys a Rubicon because it says Rubicon. I mean, like, I'm going to argue 90% of them don't even know what the locker switch is.
100%. The resale value is higher. Like, it just, you could take a Sport and you could take a Rubicon and you could build them the exact same. And when you go to sell them, you're going to get 10 grand more for the Rubicon. It doesn't.
I've done it. Yes, you're right.
I mean,
you will.
It doesn't make any sense. But every Rubicon I've just stuck, even against paying more, stuck with buying Rubicons, because my personal experience is when it goes time to get rid of it, there's always the next guy that just says, "Oh, it's a Rubicon," so it's and he'll pay the premium, he'll pay the premium. But Sport, like, it's a Sport, and it doesn't matter if it's a Sport with 60s and an Atlas and like, it's still a Sport.
Like my last one, I had that trouble.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, but they have, and some people get mad, right? And I'm like, because they're like, well, why? I want to buy a Rubicon and I don't want all this fancy stuff. And I was like, and they'll fight me to death. I'll be like, yeah, but listen, they're like, I wish Jeep had stopped doing this. I'm like, they did it because nobody bought them. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, I hate to say this. I said, I wheel my Jeeps, right? I said, quite frankly, like, I won't buy one right now that doesn't have a heated steering wheel and heated seats. And because you know what, when I'm on the trail, even, it's nice to have my nice warm. I mean, it's going to sound so bougie, but like, I like my hands to be warm. But I tell people, I remind them, I'm like, you guys remember, like, even in like late JK days, like, power windows weren't standard on a Rubicon. Yeah. And they became standard. People got all upset. I'm like, well, nobody bought them. Like, we sold like 5 last year without it. Like, so over time, they've gotten big radios and all this stuff. And everybody's like, well, why can't you get back to a basic one? And it was like, I mean, because nobody orders them. So we try to
it's the minority that squawks the most for a vehicle that sells the least. Right. Yeah.
And it's hard because I get their point. It's just one of those, like, you can't, I mean,
I think
majority.
I think all companies suffer from that. I'm sure you guys. I mean, look at and I haven't followed the numbers on 392 Wranglers, but or I use a diesel example, right?
Yep.
Forever, everybody had to have a diesel Wrangler. That was just and you guys put it together, got it out the door, and then it just felt like nobody bought them.
Yeah,
it just
there's a big rush at the very beginning. I mean, big compared to what I thought. It still wasn't huge rush, but like, you saw a big spike at the beginning, especially on Wrangler, and it just died off. Gladiator did a little better, like, it kind of held a little higher, but still, it was always, everybody's like, why'd they kill it? I mean, beyond the emissions problems, they didn't sell. I mean, like, everybody wanted it, but then they didn't buy them. Whether it's price or if people think, oh, well, because it was the eco diesel, that new powertrain is awesome. Like
Yeah,
I've owned four
I've
of them.
spent many hours in and driven them.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's hard, but it's like one thing I know, like 24 is launched, right? We like our refresh. It was the one thing that took a lot of fighting. Like the Willys now has like a rear locker. It's on 33s. Like it was trying to get that. How do I get a more basic one? It's not a Rubicon. It doesn't have a 401. It doesn't have, but it's far better than it used to be.
Yeah.
So if you want an engine, if you want to save some money and not go buy one of those. You could throw a front locker and a rock jock or an Antarock in the front for $1,500, and you're good. It's always fun. I don't know. There's so many competing things inside a huge organization, as you know, is just yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's every so often you get ones like the 392. I will always remember that thing is like, that was my favorite thing I've ever worked on. Probably will be for a long time.
So what does life cycle end look like for you guys? Like, is that when it comes time to discontinue something, are those decisions made, collectively at a upper director level and it just trickles down? Is it something where, I mean, is it something, are you guys that influenced by, you mentioned emissions. I know that's a concern for all companies, and the rotating politics of things and where we're headed. But it's been interesting this past 6 months, I think, or year, to watch, everybody come guns a-blazing with an electric vehicle. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was you or somebody else one time we're mentioning about the fine print. It's like, did you read the fine print at the bottom? Like, we may push it off a couple of years,
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's crazy that every OEM came out just going, we're going to have this by 2024, shipping 2025. Even the, like, I believe that GM, even at a big price point, thought the Hummer EV would be a big deal. I think they thought they'd sell a few more than they have. Given how many Tesla Plaids are sold in the market, given how many Model X's, Plaid at 125, 135,000 were sold. If they sold 8,000 Model S Plaids, could Hummer sell 5,000, EVs? But it hasn't really panned out for any of the OEMs. I feel like they've all, stalled in some respects, and they've kind of come back, to reevaluate. They've all got their way of the spin, but
yes, they do.
Yeah, it's been interesting. And even you guys, not to say you per se, but Stellantis, came guns a-blazing with the Ram, and this is what's going to happen, and we're going to have it. And then got very quiet, but then you kind of double down with the Charger.
Yep.
Which, boy, like that'll be interesting to see how
we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that pans out. It's going to be interesting. And is there, where does that all lead? Is there no bringing back the V8? I mean, I understand the old V8 was old technology, and does it really just go away? Or do we potentially see look, in the 70s, the muscle car went away, right? V8s went away, but somehow they came back, does that happen? Especially at Ford and others, doubling down, saying we're always going to have a Mustang. We'll take the hit type of thing.
I think the 70s is a good way to look at it, because if you think about why that all happened, right? There's the oil embargo, all the new emission stuff, everything, right? That led to all that stuff going away. And then, the first reaction there was you still had V8s, but you're talking V8s that made less power than my Pentastar. And then the OEMs figured out ways to do it, right? The challenge now you see is very similar. So globally speaking, there's a lot of these regs that are coming now that it's not you don't have the choice of, I can go make myself an all new, all aluminum, direct injected, basically a Chevy LT V8, right?
Yeah.
Like California, like CARB they literally define the percent that have to be EVs.
Yeah.
And then 13 other states follow them. And everybody's like, oh yeah, well it's, it's just them. I'm like, yeah, but them is half of the country, right? Population wise. So the hard part there is like, you get into these weird ones. Like, do I go try to develop something for the other half? And then it gets real hard to justify, right? But at the same time, you can't alienate them. It's really a fine balance. And it could always, I mean, you never know. It could swing. If everything's changed, like this year, you have the election here, you have the elections in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And both of those would shift some. That's, you take Europe and you take North America and China, and that's, the vast majority of vehicle sales in the world. I mean, there's sales other places too, but they're very, India sells a bunch of cars, but they're all Mahindra made stuff in the country. So a lot of these OEMs, I mean, you're getting this, just the challenge you have is the development cycle is this long and the political cycle is this long, right? So like if you go down the road and you're screwed, you can delay stuff, but if you try to change your whole mindset until you get some kind of, consistency, it's a struggle, because you're talking billions of dollars you're going to spend.
And that's what's crazy to me. Is that, you can bring a vehicle to market because the market wants it, right? You can bring a Mojave to market because you think there's a market for it. You can bring a Rubicon to market because you think there's a market for it, but you can't give them powertrains that they, my guess is that if you surveyed every Jeep owner, they would say, yeah, we want a V8. They may not want to pay for it. Maybe they don't like the gas mileage, but that same type of thing. Even the Charger and Challenger, I think if you surveyed current owners, they would say, yes, we love our V8. But now, you've challenged them, right? You're challenging the consumer to, like a platform and a vehicle that they may or may not like. And comes with that's a risky time, really risky time.
Yeah. The struggle you have is, without going too philosophical, right, is if you look at all the actual data, not the biased either way, right?
Yeah.
EVs can, in a whole, are cleaner for the environment long term, even with all the mining and all that stuff, right? But the problem is, if you force people into stuff, the natural, at least here in the US, the natural reaction is to like push back away from it and say, like, I think you should have both and you should have a choice.
I agree. Common sense vehicle would say that.
Yeah. I mean, look at Tesla. I mean, Tesla struggled for years. I mean, where'd they go? A decade losing money every year. But they built that brand around that, and people they were buying theirs when they had no rebates, right? They had none of that stuff because they wanted it, right? But if you don't want it, if you're pushing it versus the pull to somebody wants it, it's a lot harder sale, right? Like when we did the 382 Wrangler, I knew that it'd be sold out the day we launched it. Sold out, right? Some of these other ones are like, well, if you're not building what somebody wants, and some of it's messaging, but you said it's fundamental, right? Theoretically, if I ignore all this other outside influence, build what people want and they will buy it. Right? I mean, it's pretty simple.
That's that's what's kind of crazy in the car world right now, in the OEM world, is that, the reality is that you have a consumer that says what he wants, but you have a government and not necessarily dictating, but influencing what OEMs are building. And it's at some point there's a crossroads, right? There's a threshold of you're pushing them away. Are you pushing them into another brand because you didn't produce what they wanted?
Right.
And that's I think that's pretty scary for it happens, in even in the tire world, right? You listen to what tire they want, they listen to what are they looking for? And okay, they want a hybrid tire, they want it to work good in this, but they, don't want it loud. They're like, you listen to the customer, you try to build the best product.
Right.
But we're not at a level that we're being kind of told what we need to build. And that's very strange to me. The federal, I'll call it, mandates, right? They're not, I mean, they kind of indirectly force you there. But you can use technology around it, right? I mean, there's things they say you have to get this mile per gallon, that you have to get
this much carbon dioxide out of it on average, and you can only emit this much pollution, right? Well, you can take those three things and you can find a way to do it many different ways. It's not just the US, to be very clear. It's Europe and even Canada has these rules now. I think we talked, right? Like British Columbia, let's see how that goes. But if you say you have to get on this path, the federal government is actually not allowed to do that. It's actually like part of the law. They can't say you have to be this. But when you do that, you take away choice, right? That's the struggle part of it. Versus some of it's marketing. Like you can market stuff better, like to make people more aware. But I mean, if you've spent any time on social media in the last like 3 years, like the people that are, I don't care if you gave some half these people a vehicle that would actually meet their needs and is better, they won't take it just because of the sheer. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy. Some of the stuff I see.
And there are some with the full electric initiative. There is a segment you're never going to be able to push that on. You could give it to them,
right?
And there are shortcomings in it still. I mean, even Tesla, which is so far ahead of the game on the charging network, everything about it. I'll tell you my story from Friday. Went to go visit Gonzaga with wife and kid Friday. And I said, well, we're going to take the Tesla. And because we have one that we use here on and off the island, just run around car, and it's great. And my wife's like, no, we're not. I don't want to stop and charge. I'm like, there's 12 chargers. It's no big deal. Like we'll be there. I'm running the calculation. Like we'll wind up spending about, 35 minutes between two chargers, and we'll be there. It'll be no big deal. Well, we get up in the morning, and then I forgot to pre-charge the car, right? So pre-charge, you got to warm the battery. So we get going, and we don't get 27 miles in, and I went from 100% to like 78%, and then 76%. I was like, I feel like we're burning a lot, because it was 28 degrees, or no, it wasn't 20, it was like 30 degrees, like 29 degrees. It was cold. And I just made the command decision, like, we're going to turn 27 miles around, go back home and get the truck, because I'm not going to listen to you complain about sitting there charging, being late, because we had to charge one more time, right? To make up that difference. And, and in the end, like, we went home, got the truck, drove there, made it on time, even with the turnaround of the hour turnaround that we had. But it's not necessarily, for everybody. Like, they just, there's times like that where you just say, a gas car is just more convenient, or a diesel truck is just more convenient. So I do think Stellantis is on the right track with, like the 4xe, 4xe, whatever you guys call it. I think that platform is, the hybrid will win the day, right? The hybrid is going to be the one where everybody settles into and maybe figures out how to squeeze as much electrical power into it, if even just to hit the EPA number, So I don't know.
Yeah, that's one. That's where I think Ford and Toyota both said that's where and GM Dallas come back in. So that's where everybody's kind of leaning. The challenge with them is now you have two complete systems, so cost wise, they get high, but they're but what you said is completely, like, Mallory and I've had this discussion, right? And I've got my 392, my Ram, right, and she has a Grand Cherokee.
Yep.
And she's been saying, she goes, well, my next one, why don't I get one of these, like, I'll be like an EV if you guys make me an SUV, because I just drive to work and back. Typically when we go somewhere on a trip, it's usually camping, right, which we're taking my truck anyway. Or somewhere else. And if we had to, we'd just take my truck. We have it. And I think if you have I'll be like the stereotypical one. If you have a multi-vehicle household, you have a garage with the ability to, put a charger in your garage and all that stuff.
It's a great second vehicle.
It's great for a second vehicle,
right? It's the electric platform's awesome for the runaround. That's why, my wife is on and off the island to shops. She goes from one town to the next town and back. And then, it's kind of a repetitive week for her. So for that, for me, it's awesome. There's no oil changes. There's no air filters. There's no, there's put some tires on it when it needs it and run it. So, but it's, as like I say, it's been interesting to see the OEMs, dial it back and really, I guess we'll see where it heads. Do you think that change, let's say new administration comes in, we're swimming in dollar gasoline a gallon, like, does that change anything? Is it not enough to be a 4-year versus, what kind of years do you need of change, or are you just too worried because other countries, like you're following other countries?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, ours specifically, I think, if you look at Stellantis now, it's so global. You've got about 50-50 Europe and US, right? I
Gotcha.
mean, there's the other regions too, right? But I mean, Europe and US, or Europe and North America, I should say, volume-wise, they're about the same. Now, granted, they're completely different. We sell some products there, right? Some of the Jeeps go there, stuff like that. Not really Rams, not really Dodge. You don't see a lot of those, but you see like the Jeeps go there.
Yeah.
But then Europe's got, all the Peugeot, Citroen,
Yeah.
all the European brands that you don't really see here. You see some of them in Mexico, but
Yep.
they're kind of isolated. So I mean, they know each other, but they're not tied. Like what we do here doesn't greatly influence them, and vice versa. The struggle you just get is it's last time it happened, right? For instance, like when the last person took office before the current one,
Yep.
it took them 2 years to delay stuff, and then then you were 2 years away, because the problem is to change the laws, it takes time. So assuming
Yeah.
somebody new came in, you're looking at a year to 2 years before they can even do anything. Well, then now you're within 2 years of the next one, so you're like, oh, I can't really.
Yeah.
You can move stuff, but like your long-term vision has to kind of stay. Our CEO came out during our results and said that we're not changing any course right now. I think a lot of it just across the whole auto, just my personal view is that across the whole auto industry, there's a lot of flux over the next, several years, because you're starting to see, we're starting to see stuff now with, interest rates still are high,
Yeah.
sales, not just any given company, but sales as a whole are down, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're seeing, decreased volumes, which means decreased income, which means less money to spend on investment, and electrifying your fleets isn't exactly cheap.
Yeah.
By any means. And I think it'll be a strong consumer push too, right? Because that's what you'll start seeing is nobody's doing it yet, but like, if example, like if we come out with like the new Charger, right, and suddenly they don't do well, and Mustang sales go up by 20%, that might open somebody's eyes, right? Or vice versa. If we see nothing change and they all sell great, then maybe they're like, oh, well, this was smart. I think the next probably 3 to 5 years will be you might see a lot of things change.
Why don't all of the car companies, band together better, in a sense? Why aren't they? I'm not saying that you're banding against, like you're being persecuted, but why? It seems every once in a while you'll hear a car company say, push back a little bit and say, meeting those 2028 CAFE standards are just going to be near impossible to do. Yeah. But it's not collectively as a group. Like
they actually do it. You just don't hear about it. So there's actually a huge, there's a good chance. So like the new stuff comes out for EPA this year, right?
Yep.
They put out proposals like, I think it was last year. They always put out one that, here's what we think we're going to do. Here's a couple that are worse. Here's a couple that are better. The entire auto industry, even including all the foreign brands, everybody. I guess you could argue whether we're foreign or US, whatever, but all the auto companies together all have like a industry trade group that all work together. That they've been working with the EPA and all this stuff, right? And that's where they're all saying, they actually will show, like, if you do this to us, this is what it would cost us, and they'll do it as the whole industry. Like, this is what it costs the whole one, and that's why I think you're going to see that they actually back off some on what they said they were going to do.
Because it seems some of the numbers seem unattainable.
Oh yeah,
and
I think they did that. So I think
at a reasonable, like, sure, if everybody wants to drive $140,000 Ram,
yes,
or it's obtainable,
right?
And have maintenance costs for 9 million little electric pumps and hoses, but there's a threshold with all of that. you know?
So I think they do a lot. You don't hear about it publicly because there's this, in certain groups, right? If you publicly come out and bash it, you get a bad, PR side, right? So I think a lot of it happens behind closed doors, but they do all work together on those type issues where it affects the whole industry because, if any one company goes in and complains, it's like, well, oh, okay, Weiner's like the other guys are fine. But when you all go together, then they know that, okay, wait a minute, if all 12 companies are coming at us with the same information, okay, maybe we need to reevaluate our plan.
Yeah.
And that does happen.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. I didn't realize that because you're right. It doesn't really make much of the news, but
no, not at all.
And I can see why in this current climate that we're in of it's easy to single out one and, we all,
you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
Yeah.
Whichever group of people you make mad, they become the loudest, right? The ones you made happy just kind of go away. And it's like,
yeah.
It's the way of the world now.
So when is the next Wrangler refresh? I know there was somewhere I read that it was coming in the next 2 years or has a life cycle. 3 years.
I know the UAW said some stuff that was in the contract, but there's
that's what I saw.
It's I'm trying to remember what theirs said. If you think about Wrangler, typically is 10 years, right?
Yeah.
JK 11. So if you think about 11 years, 10, 11 years, but again, it could be longer, it could be shorter. Do I know? Kind of. Can I say?
I'm not asking you.
I know. You know better. I know what you know about.
And again, there was some stuff that it probably was factory stuff or something.
Yep.
That I read.
I read all about that stuff. Make you laugh. Some of it.
Yeah, and it's and then it's the Cherokee, the new XJ coming soon. Is that still on track? Is that still going to make it? Or that was like all electric or?
I'm trying to think. I don't know if the Cherokee they've even talked to the Cherokee sized Wagoneer S one they've shown.
Yeah,
that might actually be reality. It's next. It's actually pretty sweet looking. I've seen them, the real ones. That's one where I would say,
is that like Grand Cherokee size, just a little boxier? Is that more like Commander size, or is it?
The Wagoneer S is a little bit smaller than today's Grand Cherokee.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a two row. It's the one that it's kind of like a fastback. It looks like from the side it looks like an SUV, but from the back it's kind of a They showed the teasers not long ago, but that's the only ones they talked about with that one. The Cherokee was, I don't know. I think they should just make another, Cherokee, call it an XJ2. I don't know. No, but there's
well, that was the one that they touted that had possible removable doors on it. The teaser had.
That's a Recon.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking about. That's the one I'm thinking about. Sorry.
Yeah, that comes later. Is it later this year? I think it is.
Nice.
They showed it all, and then they went radio silent. So
yeah, agreed. It made a splash and then gone.
Yeah, but that one I've seen too, and it's actually, it's Wrangler-ish sized. I think I'd pull Mallory. Wagoneer S or one of those is probably what she's going to get next. One of those two. That one I think kind of. If you look at it, some people I think they said look at your Hummers. I don't know. It's very boxy, right?
It's very boxy. Yeah, it's very boxy.
Yeah, it's got some cool stuff in it. I mean, it'll be.
Were any drivetrains released in that? Just
powertrains? Little bit they've said is they'll be electric. That's all they've said.
Gotcha.
Go for it. It's the challenge of that one is, and again, I get the Jeep person. He's like, oh, that's cool, but I'm like, the doors come off. I'm like, I don't know if I would have worried. I don't know if I'd have spent a whole lot of time worrying about that. I mean, how many times do you take the doors off your Wrangler? I take mine off.
I'll be honest. I have yet to ever take doors off a Wrangler. I'm just not that guy. So
I run half doors on mine, so I guess maybe that's why I don't.
But when I had that Commander, I often thought about it.
But yeah, those ones they're all coming. They said they'll see. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting next couple of years, I think, across all automotive. Europe's starting to see now, like the Chinese are just coming in like crazy. Like, they're coming in with all their stuff and just price cutting everyone.
Yeah, that's I think in all industry they're smart. They're smart business people. The first incarnation of whatever they're building's junk. The second, it's a little better. By the time they get to the third or the fourth, they're getting pretty good.
Yeah.
They're starting to figure it out. And you can't underestimate their ability to put something in the marketplace. It's easy to say all China products crap, but the reality is all of our shoes, for the most part, that we buy and put on our feet are from China. All of our socks that we buy are from China, and people like cheap socks and good shoes, so it's a fear, I think, in all industry. Not necessarily fear. It's I always say, if you can't beat it, join it. Figure out how. I mean, if they can do it, there's figure out how to do it. Because otherwise, at some point, they're going to have a better mousetrap, and it's gonna carve into sales. Anyway,
I think Ford started saying stuff about it lately, because I mean,
Tesla too.
Like Europe, because Europe, they didn't even like last year in Europe, like they sold like nothing the year before, and like last year it was, I mean, I can't remember, it was something like 5% of all like EV sales, which doesn't sound like a big number, but taking 5% in 1 year is unheard of.
It's true. I read something with Tesla that they, BYD has come in and really carved into, and Tesla's been able to hold on to a little bit of that market share, just because Tesla's kind of like it's still seen as the Louis Vuitton brand, right? It's still seen as this prestigious to own a Tesla. And so they've kind of hung on to that, where BYD is just more the everyman Camry. So yeah, I think it poses a number of challenges for all the OEMs to figure out, and like, I don't know if it's still true, but I know a number of years back, I was dumbfounded to hear how many Buicks are sold in China. And Buick was like a brand in China, like Cadillac, or, like Mercedes, like a sought after brand, so, I think that'll be a challenge for the OEMs to figure out what their brand looks like and how to maintain that upper level to fend off their own cheaper imports, so to speak.
Right. I mean, if you look at it, again, some of them said it, like they flash it back to, like, and it's a very valid point. Like, look at like what the Koreans, like, look when Kia came in, Kia and Hyundai, right? Hyundai came to the US. I mean, they launched, their whole intent was, it's a cheap car. It doesn't have a lot of frills. We just want it to be cheap, but reliable. Like, they went, and I would argue their first one might not have been either, but it was, but they came in.
Reliable, they were not, but,
but over time, they came in cheap. They kind of got the quality better over time, right? Then they launched Kia, and now they have a Genesis that rivals a S-Class, right? I mean, it's what they got a lot of sales because they came in and they were cheap. I mean, they came in, really low, and over time they just built it up where now they're. I mean, I've seen some of those things. And I'm like, when I first saw Genesis, I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I got in one, and it's like, holy crap, they were really nice. That's what they're worried about. The Chinese to do the same thing. Like, you saw with the Japanese first, like a lot longer ago, right? When Honda and Toyota came in with, again, they were utilitarian, low cost transportation, right? And looking at where now, I mean, Toyota's freaking huge.
The Lucid Air, right? It was meant to, when conceived and built, was meant to compete with the Model S. It's amazing. I mean, I'm not a personal fan of the styling, but the car itself is amazing. The materials are amazing. But is it, I don't know. Is it as cool as a Tesla Plaid? Like, to me, the Plaid is a cooler car
right now. So
it's, I mean,
they know,
but they'll figure it out, right? I mean, they'll figure it out, and it'll be some interesting times, I think, as we move ahead into automotive, where you guys are also in a unique position, in my opinion, next to other OEMs. You don't have a lot of those spin-off internal brands, like GM has GMC and Chevrolet, and they have Cadillac, and they have a lot of crossover. I feel like you guys don't have a lot of that in, internal brands per se.
Right.
You don't have
they killed them.
I guess, you have, right? You've killed some of that.
Yeah, they did when they, I think that was one of the big things out of the last bankruptcy, right? When you had Fiat and then we became FCA, was, with the exception of the 300 and Charger, anything that was duplicates, they got rid of, right? Like the minivan became only Chrysler. Like
Only
anything
Chrysler.
that had, you didn't have, you know, you used to have like
There
the
wasn't a
Dodge
Dodge
Nitro
and a
and
Chrysler. Yeah.
yeah. You used to, remember you had like the Liberty and the Dodge Nitro, which is,
Yes.
I mean, it's like why, like GM still does it with their stuff, right?
They do.
Ford's,
Yeah, they do.
Ford's backed off some, like some of their Lincoln, and they're kind of more unique now. GM still keeps going. I mean, GM still has, at least from a Chevy and GMC Cadillac, they've got. I mean, they're very. I would argue, I guess the Escalades are a little nicer, but they're 90% of sheet metal's the same on all those vehicles.
Yeah.
We stopped doing that. It's now across all Stellantis. There's I can't even remember. I should know this, but there's like 17 brands, I think it is, or something. But a lot of them are in Europe, right? I mean, you don't. To your point, the cross. Nobody's ever looking at an Alpha in a Ram, or a Maserati and a Jeep. Like they're kind of split apart where they don't really share much between them. I guess you still have to go in Grand Cherokee a little bit, but they try to focus each of the brands. Like, what's your mission? So yeah, it'll be.
It would seem the Jeep brand will have some expansion for sure coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the new models coming down the turnpike, and then Ram. Anything new coming for Ram? Anything you can talk about? Anything?
I mean, they showed all that. I want to see how the what do they call it? Did they call it the Ram Charger? That's what they call it. The electric, the range extender version that's coming this fall. I want to see how those do. Because everybody says, "Oh, this is what you should do." It. So I want to see with like the diesel, like we talked about, right? Like this is what you should do. I want to see if anybody buys them. Because like I said, I tow with my truck a lot. I mean, my camper and my Jeep. My truck spends working from home. My truck spends like 70% of its life with a trailer on it. I couldn't have an electric truck because when we go, I mean, it's just I have to stop every 100 miles. That thing I could actually use, right? I mean, I could actually have, since it's gas and electric, you could have it as a EV for my little commuters around town.
Yeah.
And then when I need it for a truck, I would never have to worry about the range anxiety part of it. I just want to see but the problem is in the market, you still have gas, right? So will somebody want that? That'll be interesting to me. Will somebody want that?
For me, it's a full circle of the Tahoe hybrid, the Chevy Volt. Like we've just come full circle. We're just right back around.
Yeah.
But I think that is the future. If you're having to increase your, MPG to get to a certain level, it's a battery pack under the seat and a hybrid transmission. Like I don't know, I know how you do it and retain good customer retention, still be able to tow, your trailer, your travel trailer, everything else, and not turn around and take the electric car back, right? Yeah. I mean,
that's right. The really crazy one I want to see, but this is probably a little bit further out, is I want to see what they do with like commercial stuff, right? Because these same regs that exist for long haul trucking, they're slightly farther out, but I mean you cannot. Tesla has one, whatever, but you're not making electric semis.
It's not. I don't think it's there yet. But I'll say that about the truck. I think there's great lessons to be learned from the Lightning and the Cybertruck. We at work we have two of them. One of which is full time at the office now. While it drives like an F-150, it looks like an F-150. It does bring a sense of uneasiness. I don't know, range anxiety. I mean, I have a Tesla, but I just, there's so many unknowns when you hop into it and you have this steep learning curve of, okay, if I do need to tow a trailer, can I really tow it 75 miles, 100 miles?
Right.
Like, how much am I really going to burn? There's so many unknowns and variables. Temperature, like people just have no clue that, the range difference between a battery at 70 degrees and a battery at 30 degrees, like it's 25%.
And even if you do your little pre-charging, like you talked about, you're still using the heaters and everything else more that you still burn in the summer in the desert with your ACs cranked. Everything comes from the same battery, right?
Yeah.
People always forget. It does that in gas car too. Just people forget that your gas mileage drops when the AC is cranked and it's 120 degrees out.
Yeah. I agree. No, it'll be interesting to see. What's your take on the Bronco? there's not a lot in the market, but I've seen you comment on some of the Broncos stuff, sometimes jokingly, but to be fair, Jeep's got what, 1.7 million JKs and JLs in the market since release.
Oh, there's
or more, maybe 2
J1
million.
Yeah, it's probably pushing 2.
Yeah, I mean that's a significant number. So it's hard to gauge, and I don't feel that Bronco carved into Wrangler sales. I mean, Wrangler sales could be slow, but that could be a more of an economy driven thing.
Yeah,
I think.
Price issue.
Yeah. Also, the prices got a little crazy there. A lot crazy. I did see that you guys released a bare bones 2-door Sport for $33,000. I think it was.
Yeah.
I saw that was showing up in my Facebook feed. That brand new Sport 2-door, $33,000 MSRP. So. But
the TM's working.
But did it elevate the segment? Because I think a lot of times in a group or a segment where you have a very strong brand or a very strong leader in something, what happens is you have others come along to have their interpretation of it, and then the whole segment elevates everything, including potentially the sales of your own product, because there's more notoriety and more awareness of that segment. So I feel like I've never owned a Bronco, but we've all watched the launch. We all know, we all have friends that, have Broncos and are involved in that segment. And I feel like it was good for Wrangler as well. I feel like it elevated everybody's awareness of what a utilitarian style SUV should be and can be. So what's your thoughts? I mean, you think the same? Did it elevate Wranglers?
Yeah, when they first launched, I'd say the first year and a half when they launched, it was, I think Wrangler sales actually went up to your point.
Yeah.
And then you saw the Bronco one. So if you look at that's the segment, actually the way we segmentize them, all you have in there is Wrangler, Bronco. I think they put the 4Runner in there. It's kind of a body on frame SUV that I guess could kind of, the whole segment just went up, right? So volumes, the Bronco wasn't stealing a bunch. I mean, sure, there was some defection there, but in general, it just climbed, right?
Yeah.
So you just have more sales. I think recently, over the last probably year, you get a little bit more of that now, where you're seeing people cross shopping them, but it's still not ridiculous. So you're seeing sales soften. People are like, oh, Wrangler sales are down. Well, so are Bronco ones. My dealer here has 3 Raptors sitting there that I keep trying to spin a deal on.
We got them on the lot out here. Yeah, we've. I mean, it's the first time in a little while that our Ford dealer has F-250, 350s on the lot, Broncos on the lot, and I'll say the same with the Ram dealers. 25 and 3500 Lariats and Limiteds are on the lot. I know a guy that just bought a new 3500 Limited Ram, and they're, Stellantis is offering a rebate this month. Got money off of MSRP, and was pretty excited about it. So it's the market's caught up. Yeah, let's hope that interest rates.
Hope it doesn't go the other way now.
Yeah. It's a concern for all industry, I think. I mean, I like to refer to it as the COVID hangover, that we're still in this post-COVID hangover where, everybody had a little extra money, they spent it. Doesn't matter if they bought Jeeps, tires, wheels, suspension, whatever it is. And there's a life cycle to that, right? And now we're just trying to come out of that life cycle of 2-3 years and get back to a normal cycle of things.
Right.
So whatever that
people
is.
have forgotten, you see all the rates and stuff now, which granted they are high compared to the last few years. But historically, they're not. I mean, they're slightly inflated, but if you go back, I looked at my first house I bought, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Mortgage rates right now are about where it was the first house I bought.
Agreed. And I can remember financing my first car, and it was 8.99%. It was, it was in that same range we're in today. But what's funny is you now have a whole generation that has grown up and in their 20s and 30s and have they have spending power. They're not in on that, right? No. I mean, I have friends that are in their early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and they're like, I'm hanging on to the Ram. I'm not going to throw down for 8%. Like, truck's only got 60,000 miles. I've had it for 5 years now. I'm going to hang on to it. Like, they're not spending that money, you know? So I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting to see where, you know, if interest rates come back down, supply gets back to normal. You know, do we get back to buying trucks and spending, you know, putting wheels and tires on and suspension on, and, you know,
I think it'll reset a little bit over the next, like, probably 12 months or so. You're starting to see everybody's starting to get inventory. I'm not gonna say it's not gonna, I hope anyway. I'm not, if I could foresee all this, I'd be retired. I'm a very wealthy person, but, you know, the way things have built back up, like, to your point, I think, you know, you usually see in automotive, you see these little, you know, I'll call it waves up and down, right? You had the COVID one was like this huge, and I think you're gonna have like the equal dip you're seeing now, and then it kind of just needs to smooth back out again. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
I think we all,
I enjoy what I do,
are.
so I hope so.
Yeah, I think we all are.
Yeah.
I think we're all, you know, I know it's challenging because there were such high numbers, right? There were such good days that if you're investment owned or traded on the stock market, like it's, you know, that's a really, you want to get back to that. And I think all the OEMs, I know my Stellantis stock has not done, it did exceptional for a while. And now we're back to like, it's okay, but no different than Tesla. No, look at Ford's stock. Ford, I mean, I bought it when it hit rock bottom there, and it was 450 I mean, it was cheap. And then it went, it went to like 17, 18, $19. And I think it's back down to $10 or something. It's all over the board, but it's, you know, I think if we can just get out of this COVID hangover and get back to some normal spending power, you know, and
back
more
to normal reality,
normal, you know, whatever that looks like. But
to answer your other question you had before too, like the actual Broncos, people laugh when I say this sometimes, like my non-joking sense. I'm like, the fact that somebody was able to even get that thing approved, like, props to them. Like, I could not imagine walking into like the board today with, like, if I had a business proposal for the Wrangler that didn't exist, that would never make it to our board of directors to be approved, because people like, are you crazy? Like, you want to launch inefficient, boxy, not great driving, like, no, go away. Like, go work somewhere else.
The carrot was 1-2 million units in the marketplace. Like, the fear is that you had predecessors that tried to attack Wrangler, FJ Cruiser, right? I think even in its best year, I think collectively there was less. The FJ Cruiser run, oh man, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it was like 29,000 or 40. I mean, it wasn't like a huge run of FJ like people think it was. And then you look at some of these others that came along, and they were just really small numbers. Like, they never sold a lot in the segment. So for Ford to come along, Ford saw, you know, Jeep and said, okay, great. They sold 100,000 units. Like, man, if we could come in and sell 25 or 30 or 50,000 units, 100,000 units, you know, we might, you know, be taking some market share, might be carving it out. So, and they did. I mean, they came out, I think the 100,000 units their first year, right? They got to be a success. I mean,
they did. I mean, like I said, I of course naturally have to bash them, but there's especially like just with Lauren. But I mean, generally speaking, they they did a good job. I mean, I brought one of those things. I brought one of the first ones home, and I brought one of the later ones home, like after the quality stuff, which every OEM has when they launch. And I mean, they did a good job. There's stuff I'd look at and go, that was dumb, and there's other stuff I look at and go, damn, somebody was smart there.
Well, they didn't have the triad. They didn't have the, you know, the trio of the, you know, the Scott, you know, that you guys were on the research front, maybe, you know. Funny story, you know, Ford can, the rumor, and I'll say this is the story told to me, is that in, this goes back, what year is this? 14, maybe 14 or 12, 13 or 14, they actually kind of halfway commissioned a study Ford did through SEMA on the Wrangler. So there's actually a Jeep Wrangler. So it was before jail. So that was maybe 15, I think, that came out. And they used SEMA and the data a little bit on some of the decision making to actually get the final push to get it out the door.
I can see that.
I don't know if it's true or not. It was a story that was told to me, because
I probably did.
I went back. There was a lot of demographic with who the owner is, what they looked for in their SUV or like it was a Jeep Wrangler survey, for the market. So I thought it was interesting. For me, the fear with the Bronco is they sold 100,000 units with an IFS, right? They proved to the market, well, not to the Jeep guy, but they proved to a non-Jeep guy and a segment that you don't have to have a solid axle, right? That you can have an IFS and still sell 100,000 units. So that's the fear for me. I love Jeeps, the Jeep moves away from that, but I believe it's much like the V8. It's, the writing's on the wall. At some point it's coming. So
yeah, we'll see. Maybe not. We'll see. Well, I'll start the rumors on whether it's independent or not, and give it a few more years. I used to tell people when the JL was coming out, they'd say, I'd be like, no, it's solid front, independent rear. We're going totally unique. Holman used to just laugh at me because he's like, at least I know you're saying it so bluntly that nobody would ever do that. But I know you're not, because that was my way to quash people. People would try to ask me questions. I'm like, I can't answer that. So I'm like, listen, I'm going to throw something out there so off the wall. Nobody would ever do that. That they'll know that I'm joking. The next one will be interesting to see. I think there's going to be, so Ford did that, right? And quite frankly, I mean, between you and me, right? If you want to do the extreme stuff, compare so my Wrangler I'm building in my garage, right? I mean, that's me in my garage, hand tools, on 42s. We'll do whatever. Yeah. Would they take Lauren to build their Fun Haver Bronco on 42s? I mean, that's
it's a commitment, and that's a very small segment, right? That segment is vocal. Like we're very vocal on all the Facebook groups and everything else. But the reality is, when you look at 100,000 units that went out the door, one could argue that it's 1%.
That's what I was gonna say. So if you take those out of the equation, where there's a very significant difference, and again, the flip side is if I go out in the desert, I'm gonna be waving at the dust trail in front of me when he's gone. The normal average person, I would argue, you could take a stock Wrangler or Bronco, not even a Raptor. Just take a what's their top level? I should know this. Badlands, whatever. A Rubicon, stock to stock, and go take them on a trail. 90% of what people are going to do are willing to stick a $50,000+ vehicle into. Either one of them will do, right?
Yeah, agree.
The vast majority, which is the scary part, because that's if you think about a bean counter side, right? If I write off the other people, but
that's what I'm getting at. I was surprised that the JL was solid axle, but I think again, when the Broncos come out and kind of proved, and now you see, there's you see the Land Cruiser that, that's come out now. I think Land Cruiser will be interesting because it's a $50,000 starting price point. I think it tips into Wrangler, and I think it tips into Bronco. So I think it gives those Toyota owners that love, the Land Cruiser brand is super strong.
Oh yeah,
globally.
They are.
So I think that segment's going to get more crowded, and OEMs are going to have to look to make more profit, right? And
what I think that'll be interesting to see from all the other OEMs is when Scout comes out, because that's got, not saying they have the same, but it's got that.
It's got the brand, but you're back to Cybertruck. To me.
No, but I'm saying the thing is, they're electric only, right? So the question becomes, if they come out and do well, that'll send a different message. If they come out and completely tank, it'll send them. Either one will send a message, right? So that's the one I want to see, because they're only going to be electric, right? And their intent is to make I'll call it Bronco.
Yeah, right? It's not. To me, it's not going to be far off from what a Rivian RS1 or whatever it is, right? The not the new one they just launched, the R2, but I think Rivian is a fairly capable platform.
Yeah.
Put a good tire on it. I think it'll wheel and do what you need it to do,
Mhm.
within its, and I think Scout's going to be that same
Yeah.
format, right?
That's my projection too. I'm just saying, I just want to see how that could change some. I don't know, just from the off-road segment perspective. Like, right, if people have a mentality, oh, we'll eventually get there, and they launch and it's a complete flop, it'll tell you maybe you're wrong, or vice versa. If they launch and they have this other extreme following, I don't see that happening from that. I mean, the Scout name's known, but I mean, let's be real, it's a very small cult. Most people that are alive today that they're going to target, because that's going to be probably more younger generation, probably don't even know what a Scout is.
I
Jokingly.
would tend to agree with you. I would tend to agree. Although my kid knows what a Scout is and pretty familiar with it, but I don't know that she knows about enough of the history or legacy of where International came from, or
that's probably also because it's your kid. I bet you if I asked my son, even he'd be like, "What? A Scout?
The BMW tire killer?"
Yeah, right.
What's he driving now?
His Wrangler.
Oh, you got him a Wrangler. Nice.
He's a JL. Yeah,
nice.
Right now.
Nice.
I think his lease. He has a corporate lease one, so I got him one through work, so he couldn't modify it. He can't do too much with it. It's about up. We'll see what he gets next.
So what are you working on in the garage now? You've got the one you bought that was the flood one.
Yeah. So
tell me about that.
So I have my 392, right? So I have my Deco Green, one of two 392s that I've tried about
a year now. You've had that thing?
Yeah, 2.
Nice. Wow.
It's over 2 years old. It's got 5,000 miles on it. It's like my little toy, right?
Yeah.
It's 3 or 4 times now I said I'm going to build it, and literally everyone I know in the industry calls and yells at me. They're like, "Don't you dare!" Like, people refuse to sell me parts, like everything, and I'm like,
"Yeah, I'm with you. I think I love a 392 with a 37 on it and enjoy it.
Mine's got Curry HD60, so just with stock outers, Nitto 38s, and it's great. Like, I can jump in it. I can drive to the off-road park 3 hours away, 16 miles a gallon if I'm lucky on my 392, and it does great. So the problem is we go wheeling places, and my friends are all in, like, I'll call them more not give a crap type Jeeps that I just drive around on the bypasses. So I said, just build yourself another one. So I was like, I looked at some JKs, and nothing to offend JK people, but I don't know. TJ, the design I look at, it's like timeless. JKs, I look at it, just when JL came out, it just aged them. Like, I looked at one, I had one, I just like the JLs better. Plus, like I said, I'm kind of bougie. I want my heated stuff. So
heated wheel is nice. I'm not gonna lie. The heated wheel,
my first mods.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the JL.
So I said I have to have a JL. I said I'm not buying a new one if it's going to be a toy. So I did my favorite thing to do is go to Copart and start looking for Jeeps. I found a 21 Nacho, right? Rubicon.
Yeah.
It's for sale in Oregon with a flood title from Arizona, which I found odd. I bought other flood JLs in the past.
But kind of makes sense. Like, Arizona,
monsoon,
flash flood, something happened or across
the Oregon or whatever. Yeah. But those auction things, they can go anywhere. I bought them in the past. And a lot of times, like the last 2 I bought, I spent maybe $500 to fix them because, most insurance companies, you get like 12 inches deep in water, they'll write it off as a flood. Well,
I bought a what year was that? A 2000? No, that was it was the last year of the TJ?
95.
So that was.
I'm sorry. That's
no.
2006.
2006. So that was like a 04. I want to say it was like a 04. The first year of the Rubicon, 04.
Yep. Yeah.
It was an 04. I bought it. It was same thing. It was a flood, and you could see the line of mud across the dash that ran across, and you could see, and then it looked like somebody pitched it in a mud hole, and the inside of the airbox was full of mud. The tube was full of mud. There's mud on the back of the throttle body. there it hydrolocked the motor, so it bent a connecting rod, so it made a really bad racket. But it was cheap. It was
Right.
it was cheap. So I bought it, brought it home, cleaned it up. I drove it for probably 6 months before I finally with Moab coming up. Like, I can't go wheel with this motor making a rod knock, 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 knock. So I wound up putting a motor in it, but I just remember pulling the intake manifold off, because I got a lawn block, so I use the intake manifold, the exhaust manifold. I remember pulling the throttle body off, and there was like mud on the back side, like gravelly stuff. I'm like, I can't believe that went through the motor, but it was cheap. It was cheap.
4 liter.
Yeah. And of course, when it came time to sell it, I took in the shorts, because it had a wreck title, right? And didn't matter. I put a new motor in it, re-geared it, like did a FabTech long travel kit at the time, which was like their coilover long travel kit. Went crazy on it, and I still got beat up when I put up for sale. It's got a wreck title. It's like, yeah. But I had fun with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. That's like kind of with this one. So I got it. I ordered it. I bought it on Copart, had it shipped from Oregon to here.
Yeah.
Again, I bought a couple more. I was like, I don't know where it actually looked clean, right? So it gets here, and it came on like a car hauler. And I knew it was dead. So I look up, it's on the top row. I look up at it, and the oil pan's missing. So I'm like, ooh, that's not a good sign. So
missed that picture.
Yeah. Right there, I looked at it, and I'm like, as soon as I did that, I was like, oh God, here we go.
The oil pan's missing.
So the guy's like, I don't know how to get it off the truck. And I'm like, well, can I drive it off your truck? And he's like, well, sure. So I go up there, I'm like, I got e-brake in one hand, no power steering, this thing won't start. And I'm like just edging it off, this 35-degree down slope in this truck.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, when I get to the end, just get out of my way. So I live on a private road. So I said, it's going to roll off the road. I'll get my other Jeep and I'll drag it back in my yard. So I did that, took it to the garage, pull the intake and shine my flat. It's a 2 liter. So shine my light down there, and the turbo is just scale rust. The whole thing's full. You can see the line of water that was in there. And I'm like, oh no. I was like, okay, well, the engine's garbage. So this is one thing. So then I try to start getting the electrical to work, right? So I started trying to hook up the batteries, jump stuff out, and I pull the fuse box out, and the plugs are all full of like WD-40. And I was like, oh Jesus, this thing got real wet. So I go inside.
So almost like somebody had given it a whirl. So
somebody tried to fix it,
which makes you wonder if it so it was an auction in Arizona, wound up at auction
in
Oregon, and then wound up in auction and where you live.
Yes. So I did.
Somebody was in there before.
I got some of the stuff start turning on. So I yanked the carpet up, right? Because I'm like, I want to see if it got flooded inside. Spotless, not an ounce of dirt anywhere. So I was like, oh, well, okay. Well, now I got something to work with. The inside's like, it wasn't sitting in water. Maybe they just, launched it like you said. Like they go into a big hole and hydrolock the engine, and that was it.
Yeah.
Should I turn it on? The radio comes on, the cluster comes on, nothing else works. I said, what the hell? So I start pulling a couple modules, and I open them up, and they're just completely corroded. And now I'm all baffled. So I'm like, well, I don't understand. Like the inside's spotless. And I'm like looking around it.
So like underneath the engine, like in the battery box spotless area and all that stuff, like
clean, not a speck of dirt anywhere in the whole car.
Wow.
And I've seen ones before, like, you reach inside the frame, you can usually find some mud and stuff.
Yeah.
So I look at the seats, and I see like these weird patterns that look like, so I open the glove box, grab the owner's manual, and like throw it on the seat. It's like the exact pattern of the seat. So my best guess is, when I start figuring out everything that was failed, is they hydroed the engine. It went to a shop. They probably fought with their insurance company for who knows how long, and the thing was sitting with no top on it. So it was raining into it for months and months and months, because every computer that was toast are the ones that would get hit by rain, like where it run through, and everything that was shielded was fine. So basically, the thing just got destroyed. So then I look at it, and I'm like, okay, so now I got a real issue here, right? Because this thing's just toast. Luckily it was a Rubicon. I already knew I was going crazy with it. So
See,
TKs was
you went with the Rubicon.
Oh, of course, yes, a sticker.
Yeah, you're gonna buy
Not gonna lie.
salvage. Start with the Rubicon.
Not gonna lie, the whole reason I bought it is it was nacho. If it wouldn't have been nacho color, I probably wouldn't have bought it. But the axles were good. TKs, I stole off the whole drivetrain.
So, did the axle have water in them?
Nope. Nope. There was the front
Wow.
axle. The rear axle was dry. The TKs was dry. The front axle had probably, I'm gonna guess, half an inch of water in the bottom of it. Like when I pulled the drain plug, like a little bit of water came out. Then it was all hero. And I pulled the diff cover. There was no rust anywhere or anything. So there was a little, which kind of went back to my theory of them dipping the front end into something.
Yeah. Fell in the hole.
Yeah. At this point, like the whole electrical system's toast. I'm like, screw this, standalone everything. So I just gutted the Jeep. Like I ripped down to the bare body. Like everything came out of it. And then I started inquiring in Michigan to get this thing rebuilt, right?
Yeah.
And then, if I put a Hemi in it, it's going to be a struggle. Or if I do anything to it that's weird, I got to get into this weird like home built car thing with insurance. Everything gets a little weird here.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, I need to make this thing stock again. So I went and bought another crash sled that was I found one that was in an hour away. It was a 2023 with 1,000 miles on it that had been rolled like 7 times, like brand new Jeep that got rolled. I got it for cheaper than I could buy an engine.
What'd you end up paying for it?
$5,000.
Oh, geez.
For the whole Jeep.
Yeah, nice.
So I brought this thing home, basically transplanted the entire drivetrain and the entire electrical system into the orange one. Right. So now I've got so when you fire it up right now, the VIN is actually the other VIN. It's got 1,100 miles on it. I've already put 200 miles on it after I got it rebuilt. It's basically an 1,100 mile sport inside my Rubicon, which is just the hottest bunch. After I went through the whole thing, I took it to get inspected, right? And the guy's like, Michigan they have clear titles, they have salvage titles, right? Which you got to get rebuilt.
Yeah.
And then we instituted this flood title years ago. They did for basically for the rest of its life, it will always have a flood title so somebody knows if it's a flood car.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
as a separate, so it's not actually a rebuilt. It's designated as flood.
Yes.
Interesting.
There is a salvage flood apparently too, but I took the title with me, got my title in my name, and it came back as a flood car. So I went to get it inspected. The guy's like, "You don't have to inspect it." Part of me smiled. Part of me was like, I bought a whole other Jeep and swapped everything over for a month and a half that I didn't even have to do. So whatever, win some, lose some.
I was just looking at the pictures that you sent me, like of the and again, I wish I had some of that. I don't think of the inside of the intake.
Oh yeah,
was that the intake or the?
Yeah, I mean that's the turbo. That's the turbo.
Oh man, it just corroded like you wouldn't believe, and then
it was. I will tell you this: I'm impressed with the ring seal on a 2-liter in a Wrangler. So I pulled the head off, and the cylinders were full. The thing full of water. The thing.
You sent me a picture, and they are literally again.
They're level with
I wish I could pull that up, but they were literally rusty and full of water. Yes. The turbo picture. The turbo picture is pretty. At least all the blades are intact, but
yes,
I mean it's like it's like salty.
Yes.
Water of some sort that went through that. It's just the craziest thing.
Yeah. I still in my decisiveness, all I can picture is they swamp the engine and then let it sit in the rain for months. That's the best I can come up with because it's too clean to not be something like that. But it's running and drive. Well, it was running and driving. I put 200 miles on it. Right now it's in the garage getting ready for Moab. And so it's getting 1-tons 42s. I cut the rear wheel wells last night for the 42s.
Oh man, you're going crazy.
As you knew. But again, it's a toy. The intent of that Jeep is somebody's like, oh, what about when you sell it? I'm like, I didn't buy it to sell it like for that. I bought it to protect my other one. Right?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. There is a level of wheeling in a we have a JL 60s 40s. Mm-hmm. My wife, it's kind of she doesn't drive it every day. She drives a Tesla, but she'll drive it, once, twice a week type thing. But there are times that we've been where you just, you don't want to tear it up. Right. I
No.
mean, I don't want the crazy Sunrider top thing or whatever, the power top they call it,
Yep.
the power rag top. Like, I don't want to drag that across this shell face,
Right.
this rock, I mean, yeah, I thought our first real outing with it was, we bought that in 2019, had kind of a mild build, and then put 60s in it and turned and went to, South Dakota. To Badlands, South Dakota, I think it is. And yeah, we were there with a group and jumped in, and everybody had, Healy at that point had his, crazy Ranger with all the Ultra 4 pinnings underneath of it. And then I had a JL, and we jumped in a straight buggy trailer out of the gate. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't really plan on tearing it up, but yeah, it comes with it, It was fun. But yeah, I know what you're saying. They keep what do you think the 392 is going to do as far as value? You think it's going to hang in there? Think it's always going to be a little more sought after?
I'm so torn. I mean, they're lately, like, I keep looking because I'm seeing them in the high 50s, low 60s now for, like, 21, 22s.
Wow.
And I'm like, maybe I need to get another one. But I think you'll see, my personal view is when we stop making them, you'll see them start coming back up over time, right? Because it's kind of like an LJ, right? Like, they live for a certain period of time, right?
Yeah.
Over time, they're always going to be. You never have to worry about anything like, if Carb or somebody starts, like they do with the diesel truck guys now, they start trying to crack down on swaps. That thing's all factory, so it's always going to be factory. I think if you modify it really highly, it's probably going to hurt it. But if you keep it, fairly close to the original, like mine's got 5,000 miles on it. I should probably revert it back to completely stock. If you get one of those that's lower mileage over time, I think it'll probably do pretty good.
So
I don't know.
you guys, so V8 Wrangler going away, gone, but do you keep it in play with like America's Most Wanted? Do you keep something moving there? Because there's that conversation over on that side,
right?
that I've had. They're very good to us on the tire front.
Oh yeah, they are.
They use
a
lot of Nitto over there, and that's that's an option, I think, for much like Fox Factory, builds an upper level trim F250 or 350. I mean, having America's Most Wanted keep your V8 aspirations alive, to see, where things head. I don't know. That could be interesting. That could be interesting.
That could be. I mean, they've been doing more. I mean, they've started partnering with AEV for builds and stuff again lately. Anything's possible. Is that? I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I think you're always gonna have people that want them. I mean, AMW is close to me, right? I mean, I've known Jared for decades.
Yeah.
I go up there frequently, right? I mean, the stuff they're building now for people, it's just. I mean, I went there one day, and there was a guy that he was there. It was the first Elephant JL they built. He's like, take it for a spin. And I'm like, I don't want to be anywhere near this thing. Like, that's I know what that costs. And the guy that was buying it's like, nah, take it. He's like, whatever. And I was like, well, yeah, but what happens if they think I'll build another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I took a ride with Kevin Williams, and I will say it is pretty scary how fast it is. I mean, it's for me, it's almost because I'm not driving. It's unnerving to take a ride and something like that. But my Moab last year, he took me for a spin. It's just like, wow.
Yeah, his was like his was like 840 horse. So that the Elephant's 1,000 and it's aluminum, so the front is lighter. But I remember giving it the beans at about 50 miles an hour on a 4-lane road, just cruising, and the rear end broke loose on 40s and went sideways on me. I'm like, whoa, I'm done.
Yeah.
But the guy that told me to drive it, he literally was there to pick that one up, and he was having a Gladiator and a 2-door built. The 2-door one they built was they had it. It was no joke when they shipped it. It was a Elephant 2-door on 33-inch stock tires with 1 ton underneath it. It was like they were actually lifting the front tires off the ground in the parking lot because it didn't have all the losses, right? I mean, it was basically if you saw it, it would look like a two door. It was a stock looking two door with 1,000 horsepower engine in it. I was
Wow.
like, that one. I was like, oh man, I wouldn't drive that. You wouldn't pay me to drive that. Like I would hurt myself. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think the enthusiasts will always have a way. I don't know. We'll see.
That's what I hope. That's what with all the changes and everything. I hope that there's little pockets that keep moving and keep it. The V8 Jeep thing, I guess if you want to call it that, has been good for the industry. It's been and look, you got guys now that want to swap Coyote motors into Broncos. It's like these sub industries pop up in the automotive end of things, and
and once you have one of those things, I mean, you're always like when I told you, right? My Project Jeep, I've already got another frame, a 392, and everything sitting beside it. That like once I take it to Moab, the 392 chassis for it's being built, right? Because I can't. Once you have one, the bad thing about owning one is like now I get in like the 4-cylinder, and it's not bad, but it's compared to the other one, I'm like I can't drive this. I can't. It's the sound alone gets me. So,
yeah, I've torn with getting rid of RJL to get a 392 or have it converted and put a V8 in it, and we just I stopped and made a decision. Like we still
Right.
love the Jeep, still runs and drives and enjoy it. But you're right. When you drive a 392, it makes all the right sounds. It makes all the right feels. Like you feel in the seat of your pants, right?
Right.
The whole package makes you giggle, right? Like a little kid, you just kind of giggle and you're like, man, this thing's amazing, So it does. I mean, I'm encouraged to hear, and it's been a little bit since I've checked the market on them. I'm not an over sticker guy. I'm just, It's not in my being. So, when they were 10 over sticker, not doing it.
Oh yeah.
But when they're at sticker, like, and then to see them with, 5,000 miles or so and, come down in price a little bit. I've seen a couple that have been reasonable, I would say. Say even one or two that had, a decent bumper set on it, had a worn winch on it, like a couple of extra goodies that, was a pretty fair price. So yeah, it'd be interesting because you're right. No, I don't think anybody really cared about LJ, at least the masses. Nope. Right. And then they just started to weed, they started to go away and they got harder to find. And then, it's always amazes me with the Jeep community. How many Jeeps are just tucked in garages and just right. When we lived in Riverside, California, we used to have this community garage sale thing that would happen. And I can remember riding my bike around the neighborhood, all the neighbors, and this is like track home, California, USA, right? Little gated community, 300 track homes type thing. And I was just so blown away with how many Jeeps, whether old Willys, whether a YJ, a CJ, a JK, were just squirreled away in the garage.
Yeah,
I mean, it is a crazy phenomena of, and now it's a lot of TJs, right? Yep. I just came from where Moonshiners swap meet. It's 42 years it's been going on, 42 or 43 years. This club puts it on. They get about 8,000 to 10,000 people that come through from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And it's a swap meet of all things off-road, more or less, parts, pieces. But there's also some manufacturers that show up as well. Really great event. Fun for Nitto, because when I first started going there, I never even saw a Nitto tire. Like, we'd be lucky to see a mud grappler. Now there's like guys selling used ridge grapplers and mud grapplers and trail grapplers and, cool new JL bills with trails. And, we carved out a little niche up here in the Northwest, but just the amount of passion that exists for old, what I'll call old, your early CJ, Willys, all that stuff, mid-tier CJs and YJs and TJs, and then even new, JK and JLs. Like, there's parts at this swap meet for all of them, everything. Right. You need a Johnny joint for a, you'll find it, for a Curry arm. You need a a 60 housing that you want to put underneath something, it's there. You need a grill, you need a seat, you need a cage, it's there. You can find
Wish
it.
I had that here. I got half a Jeep sitting in my garage.
It's I mean, there are some people that I believe save up all year, all their stuff just to bring it,
Just to bring it.
Yeah, just to bring it down and get rid of it. So, and
think about the other one I think about like is like LJs, right? What you said. Think about like scramblers. When scramblers were in market, towards the end there, they couldn't give those things away.
That's true.
Go find yourself a clean scrambler right now and see what it costs you.
That's true. Even as a kid, the scramblers weren't super expensive and weren't super sought after, right? Not like they are today. If you could find a clean, non-rusted scrambler, they're sought after. Oh, yeah, the people want them. As a matter of fact, I don't think I saw one scrambler at today's swap meet. Now that I think about it, so. Yeah, that's good point. Again, they disappear in the garages, right?
Yes. That's right. I told Valerie, I said, when Tyler's 9 now. That's where I said, my present rate, I'll be able to build him a Jeep from just the parts I have in my garage. By the time he's, I said, in the next 5 years, because she comes out there sometimes, and she's like, what is this? I got, just I'm not gonna say I'm a pack rat, but if something's good, if I get a good
you
part,
can say you're a pack rat. That's all right.
Throw it away.
we all pack rat stuff,
Yeah.
I'm the same. I save it for a rainy day. I have Jeep parts here that I'm saving for a rainy day, or I may use that on a different Jeep. I might get something different, and it's interesting that the kids, the brand is really strong with kids. Like my daughter is, we bought her a Jeep 2 years ago now. And when even though it's not the most practical, like for her to go to college in, right? She's like, I want to keep my Jeep. I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, I'd rather just keep it here at the house, and you can put it at the shop, and she has no interest in getting rid of it. None. Like you could say, how about we trade that for a new Audi? No, I love my Jeep. Like no interest in getting rid of it. I don't. She may not get rid of it. I have a sister. I have twin sisters, and the one twin bought a YJ, an '87 YJ, and I'm going to say that this goes back over 20 years now that she bought that YJ. Maybe 25 years. She still has it. It's in her garage. She
sits there.
Yeah, it sits there. She'll take the top off. She'll run around the summer once or twice, put it back in the garage. Like it's got the smiley face car cover on the back. It's bright yellow, super obnoxious. It's kind of a rare, it's like a bright yellow Sahara of all things. And she loves it. She's 45 now, years old, maybe 46 years old. She's not getting rid of it. Yeah. Right. She's not getting rid of it. Jeep brands. And I think that's one reason we share a mutual friend, Will Gentile.
Oh, yeah.
And Will's very passionate about Wranglers and very passionate about the Jeep brand. And he gets very frustrated with Jeep.
Yes, he is.
Yes, and their marketing initiatives, and feeling like he wants to help, so to speak. But yeah, it is a balance when you have big business and you have enthusiasts either within or on the outside or on the fringes, and trying to find that that balance. And some companies do it really well, and some companies struggle. Yeah. Yep. Struggle. Yeah, I would agree. So, all right. Well, wow, man, we've been at this almost 2 hours now. So right. I didn't mean to take up your evening.
You're fine.
Super appreciate coming on and just sharing a little bit of your insight. Again, I'm always very having working in a corporate environment. I do not have the luxury of being able to chime in much on tire technical or say, no, you're completely wrong. Rotate your tires and get that stuff figured out. Like it's
Right.
just, I get super frustrated. And it's something that, you know, we're not able to have that outward facing, you know, as readily and as easily as you've been able to provide Jeep. And I think for me, that is that's really, really, really cool to see you be able to do that and to have the brand embrace that. So, cause you're stirring it up. So, but always with facts. That's what I tell people. It's always the facts. You always say, you don't come at it with an argument. Like, these are the facts. Kind of know what I'm talking about. So
yeah.
and
Trust me, I have to race some murder flies sometimes. I don't post them, but yes.
we all do that.
Oh yes. Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah, we all
Fun chat. Always.
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
I super appreciate it. Again, Scott Blum with Stellantis has spent time in the Jeep market and was one on the front side of just getting your JL out the door, your Gladiator out the door. Now, what are you doing now? I don't think I ever asked you. What is it? Is it heavy EV? Is it
Yeah, a lot of our future.
how to make that DPF better?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Big focus. Yeah, it's more focusing on I'm more working on stuff that's 5 to 8 years out on, you know, future initiatives. I'll leave it that way.
So back to the research front, more or less.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
That initiatives. Yeah.
we're glad you're in the seat because we know that you're an enthusiast, and yeah, that's all you can ask for to big business for me.
Right.
Just, you know, somebody that has a little bit of finger on the pulse of what's going on out there. So it makes all the difference. Well, I appreciate the time, and we chat quite regularly. So I'm sure we'll chat soon. And yeah, I again can't thank you enough.
No, thank you for having me.
All right, Scott, we'll talk soon.
I feel